In today's video, we are going to look at the difference between qualitative and quantitative research methods and why should we use any of them. All right, let's dig right in. Okay, so the first thing I want you to take note is that quantitative or qualitative research methods are not study designs. They are not study designs. Now, an example of a research design, you could find something like a descriptive cross-sectional survey, a prospective cohort study, a retrospective cohort study. These are study designs. So what we are coming to discuss are not study designs, but rather research methods. We will cover study designs in another video. All right, so when we talk about qualitative and then quantitative studies, they differ in two basic ways. Now, the first that I want to talk about is the way data collection procedure is conducted. So we'll look at that very shortly. And I'll also look at how the data is analyzed and presented, both in qualitative and quantitative studies. So you want to conduct a study and you are wondering which one should you use. At the end of this video, you will be equipped with the data or the information as to which one will help you to conduct your study. So stay with me and then let's continue. All right, so in terms of quantitative method, when we want to collect data, we use something like survey questions. So we may use survey questions when it comes to a quantitative method or quantitative approach. A survey question where the researcher will print certain questionnaires, will have close-ended or open-ended questions, print them out, and then offer it or issue it out to participants to answer. A researcher could also use controlled experiments. In this instance, maybe you could administer a drug to maybe some mouse or some mice or certain animals or what study that the person is conducting, and then look at the effect of the drugs on the behavior of certain animals, or administer a drug to a particular group of people, use a control group against the measured group and look at the effect of these drugs on them and measure them as well. It could also be an observational study where the participant just observe the researcher observe the participants, and then at the end of the day, certain recordings or measurements are taken, timestamps are taken, and then analyzed. So these are some methods that we conduct quantitative methods or quantitative approach as far as that is concerned. But when it comes to a qualitative method, it's quite complex. Even though it's not difficult, it has a very complex system. So you could use something like an open-ended survey questions where interview guides are used. In this case, you use a list of questions which are asked in a specific order. Here, the idea is that the questions are asked in a specific order because even though the researcher has opened it up for them to explore the views, the emotions, and the ideas and perspective of the participants or respondents, he's asking the questions in a specific order. That makes it an open-ended survey questions with interview guides. The opposite end of it is an unstructured or semi-structured interview guides. In this case, certain topics or questions are allowed to flow naturally. Now, instead of asking the questions from a set of questions in a particular order. So for instance, you want to know the notion of participants on, let's say, injury, and then you just throw out the questions to them and they will be talking, and as the questions are flowing, you'll be picking out your response from them. You won't ask any specific questions in any particular order. Now, the other type of method or way of collecting data as far as qualitative method or approach is concerned is using focus group discussions. And just as you imagine, here multiple people will be having a discussion, and this will be facilitated by a trained moderator. It's very important that you use a trained moderator to moderate the activities of the groups. And it could be in person where people will gather physically and they will be having the discussion. It could be online on Zoom, on Google Meet, or any online platform. Or it could be a mobile-based chat where a phone call will be placed to a conference call, and then that discussion is going on. That will be a focus group discussion. We also have unstructured observation. Here, the researcher will be observing the participant as they partake in a certain activity. It is different from the observation in the quantitative method because in the quantitative method, when you are observing the participant or observing certain animals, there are measurements that will be taken, timestamps that will be taken. But here in unstructured observation, you do not pose any question to them, but in their natural state, you observe how things are going and you take your data, and it could be as certain participants who are shopping, and you look at the way they are shopping, and then you analyze it to conduct your study. The last method of collecting data as far as qualitative approach is concerned is using what we call document or content analysis. And here you review certain documents, and the idea is to better understand a particular topic or to categorize certain elements within the document. For instance, if you take newspaper, maybe two journals from two newspaper editorials. For instance, when you come to Ghana, you could be using Daily Graphic or Daily Guide, and you want to know how they edit their editorials, or they present their editorials concerning a particular topic. I want to use an example. If you want to use politeness strategy, politeness strategy is a study where you look at how people present certain information in order not to offend the face of people. So there could be something like positive politeness, there could be something like negative politeness, and you want to know how any of these newspapers use any of these politeness strategies. You will go for content analysis in order to do that, and that will be a qualitative research method, or be using a qualitative research approach. Now, another way of looking at the difference between qualitative and quantitative method or research approach is also the way they are analyzed. So let's quickly look at quantitative method. How is it analyzed? When we look at quantitative approach, we can use certain statistical softwares such as Stata, SPSS, GraphPad, and the like. And the idea is to measure and statistically calculate averages, means, and proportions, and other numerical data points to use it to in order to judge, either to accept or reject a particular hypothesis that you are looking at. And with the quantitative method, you realize that a large number of participants need to be sampled from a particular group in question. Now, it is very important that the sample size is quite enormous in order to be able to look at the statistical power that you're looking at. So when it comes to quantitative method, sample size is very, very important, because you're going to make certain averages. You can't just take 10 people and say that the average of these 10 people is this, and then you are using it to make an inference for an entire population. No, you need to calculate specifically the sample size in order to be able to use this quantitative method. But when it comes to qualitative method, in terms of analyzing qualitative method, it could be as simple as just two participants. Just like the example I noted in the content analysis, you were using just two journals, or using two editorials, Daily Guide and Daily Graphic, just two. And then you'll be looking at the content of these two editorials. It could be as large as 10 people, it could be as large as 5 people. And so the sample size or the number of participants is not really important when it comes to qualitative method. However, you look at the emotions and then the perspective and the response that come from them. And so you can use analysis such as content analysis, like I described. You could do narrative analysis, you could do discourse analysis, thematic analysis, and ground theory analysis, and what have you. So we will have another video to really delve deeper into how to do all these analysis in details. And check me out on another video that I'll do regarding that. All right, so let's quickly look at some examples of quantitative data. For those who are wondering, how will I know that this data is a quantitative data? How will I know this data is a qualitative data? Now, an example is only 25% of the patients were satisfied with their post-operative management procedures. Now, this is a classical example of a quantitative data. Now, notice the use of numbers, measurement, 25%, meaning that the entire population has been quantified with proportions of 100%. And 25% could be any number out of the total, representing this number of patients who were satisfied with their post-operative management procedures. But when you look at the second one, a substantial majority, that is 95% of the women, had a good perception on the use of modern contraceptive methods. Now, this also is looking at proportions, using measurements and numbers. Here, certain statistical data points are used, like level of education was found to be significantly associated with adherence to medication during the COVID-19 pandemic. All right, so you could see that there is a p-value, which is a significant value. As soon as you see this p-value in the data, it is telling you that it is a quantitative data, and you can only use a statistical software conveniently to generate a significant value when you are looking at certain inferential statistics. You are doing logistic regression, you are doing t-test, ANOVA, analysis of variance, and what have you. You can have a significant value, and that is very usual with a quantitative data output. Let me show you what a qualitative data looks like. So I'm reading this out. I ran out of gas, so I lit fire on a coal pot for cooking. When I was done with the cooking, I put water on fire to boil for bathing. When everyone had finished bathing, I put another water on the fire to boil for myself. By then, we had told the kids to go to bed. The younger one said he will eat Cerelac, so his father sent him to the kitchen to prepare some for him. He was playing in the kitchen, so he hit the saucepan and slipped down, so the water poured on him. So this was a response from a participant who was asked how the burn got about. And so that you could see that the participant is describing vividly how the burn got about. Okay, and this is very classical of a qualitative data. Another example is my auntie told me that they poured salt solution on him and smeared his body with red soil before taking him to hospital. And this is a response from a patient who was asked, what did you do as soon as there was a burn? And so the patient describes exactly what he or she did in such situation. And this is a classical example of a qualitative data that have been analyzed using any of the analysis procedure that we talked about. So the last question you want to ask yourself, or you'll be asking yourself when you want to conduct your study, when should I use quantitative or qualitative data study, and why? The takeaway I want you to take note is that quantitative data is used to ask precise questions and also used to prove or disprove a hypothesis. We will look this into details in another video, but if you have a hypothesis you want to test, if you have a drug you want to test its effect on participants, if people take a particular drug, what will happen to them? If you want to analyze the effect of a particular outbreak on the participant, you use quantitative data to prove a hypothesis. However, if you want to explore and get detailed information regarding a particular pattern, here the idea is that you want to get richer insight into that particular idea, then you are going to use a qualitative data. And I say that on a smaller scale because you could use as high as 10 people and as low as 2 people for a qualitative data. For instance, in a case study where you take two patients and you study their history for a longer period of time, it could be a qualitative data. Another thing is that you could do a mixed method study where you incorporate both quantitative and qualitative data or approach.